Hello, boys and girls. Today's word of the day is unwatchable. Can you say unwatchable? Hello again and welcome back to Mimsy Park. That's correct. Today's word of the day is unwatchable because 2019's Lady and the Tramp is nothing if not unwatchable. Let's get into this whole thing and figure out why this was by far my least favorite Disney remake. As you can tell, I'm pretty heated up about this one. The original Lady and the Tramp is like my favorite, not my favorite, it's definitely one of my favorites from like the classic Disney era. I know we've talked before about how my list kind of changes from time to time, and it usually includes, like, you know, the ones after I was born and the ones before I was born. Of the originals, this is one of my absolute favorites. This and Peter Pan. I love the original Lady and the Tramp. Absolutely love that movie. This one, however, has got to be the worst of the Disney remakes. From everything about this movie was just horrendous. I know there's usually a build-up for these episodes in one way or another, whether it be energy, whether it be this, whether it be that, but we're just gonna get right into it because this was crap. Absolute crap. I normally say, if you're going to watch whatever remake, go watch the original too. Watch the original, watch this too, but just stick with the original. In this one, I'm going to flat out tell you, do not waste your time with 2019's Lady and the Tramp. I found out after watching this movie yesterday that this is a direct-to-streaming movie. To me, it feels like they filmed it knowing it was basically going to be today's version of direct-to-video, which is fine when you do like sequels and stuff like that, but when you're talking about not only a major IP in the Disney vault, but you're also talking about one of the most beloved Disney movies, and you film it like you know it's gonna go direct to streaming, you know it's gonna go direct to video, it's just right off the bat, why even bother? Why even bother making it? This is one where I can go, I don't see the point. I've said that with many of these so far. I don't see the point in making these, especially if you're not going to at least attempt to make them better. This one, I don't know why they bothered. I don't know why they bothered. There are so many movies that get filmed that midway through production just get shot down and squashed, and I don't understand how this wasn't one of them. How you don't look at the dailies from this movie through the production process and go, we're doing this wrong, this sucks, this is terrible, what are we doing? This is a waste of money, this is a waste of time, this is a crap, unwatchable movie. And now that I've gotten that out of my system, let's get into why this is such a crap, unwatchable movie. Now, there's going to be a point in this review where it gets a little socio-political, but it's only because that aspect of this movie is like jammed down your throat. I mean, it is every aspect about this movie is a safe space. This whole movie is one giant sub 2 hour long safe space. If a movie could be a padded room that would never hurt you or make you think, it would be this movie. This movie is a padded room version of a film. But we'll get into that here in a little bit. Let's talk about why, from a film perspective and from a Disney perspective, why this movie is just so terrible. From the very beginning, it feels like they are just jumping from one reference to another. And I don't mean it in the sense of there are references and then there's a little bit happening. No, it feels like they make a reference, they rush through the middle part to get to the next reference, and it feels like it's just one reference right after another. The only good part about this movie is the establishing shot. As the credits are rolling, we're going through the town. By the way, it's set in New Orleans. I'm gonna skip to the end where it's snowing a lot for Christmas in New Orleans. That just it doesn't make any sense. And like so much of this movie, it just doesn't make sense. I looked it up. I think it's done major snows around like 17 times in the city of New Orleans since like the 1800s, and even then the snow doesn't stick around. But that's a very good aspect of my whole feelings on this movie in general, is that it just doesn't make sense. You just did things to do them, and it doesn't make any sense. In a lot of the remakes they've done, there have been things that they change for the sake of changing them, whether it be, you know, to get a message across, to get, you know, to make it seem like Disney's all about diversity now, which they're not. They're doing these movies as rebranding, and this is the most blatant example of them making movies for the sake of a brand. You're not making these movies to tell a story. You didn't make this movie to make the story better. You didn't do it to portray it in a better way or anything like that, or just to upgrade it. You did it to rebrand. All of these movies so far have been Disney's attempt at rebranding. It's not an attempt at bringing them to a new audience. It's an attempt at rebranding. Some of them have done it more so than others, but none of them have done it as much as Lady and the Tramp has done it. Jock is now a girl for absolutely no reason whatsoever. It does nothing for the story. You just did it to do it. Old Reliable, if you remember from the original Lady and the Tramp, Old Reliable is that story that Trusty is always saying over and over and over again about how him and his grandpappy, Old Reliable, back in the good old days, blah, 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 blah. I don't know if I ever told you about Old Reliable. Reliable is his nose this time. It's just his nose. And yeah, there are going to be a lot of spoilers for this movie, but I promise you I'm not spoiling anything. Honestly, don't go watch this movie. Don't waste your time. It is a crap, unwatchable movie. And they change. Old Reliable is Trusty's nose this time. It doesn't do anything. It doesn't help anybody. It doesn't make it funnier. It doesn't change anything. It's just a change for the sake of change. Old Reliable's like a side character that you never really see, that they just kind of ruined. And you can say that about several of the characters. The Siamese cats aren't Siamese this time, because there's this whole big thing about how the Siamese cats were racist because they looked Asian and they sounded Asian and they sung an Asian song. Guess what? Siamese cats are an Asian breed of cat. It makes sense to me to have a Siamese cat portrayed as an Asian character. Makes sense to me. And going on the whole aspect of race and everything like that, that is the biggest part of this movie. This whole movie is made unrealistically, and honestly, Lady and the Tramp is a period piece. It is set back in the early 1900s in the deep south of New Orleans. All the Jim Deere and Darling are an interracial couple, which is fine. I don't have an issue with that. I do not care. I am a big proponent, a big supporter of equal rights. This is equal rights hijacking. That's what this is. You're hijacking valid movements, the equality, civil rights movements, gender equality. These are all valid movements that deserve recognition, that deserve validity because they are valid movements, but you're using them in a way that's unrealistic, that isn't even appealing to the groups you claim to be trying to appeal to. I've read so many reviews online from African American reviewers that are sitting here going, this doesn't make sense. This isn't realistic. And it's because these people that you are trying to push their message forward, even that, it feels pandering. It just feels like you're pandering to them and you're coddling them. This whole movie feels almost like it's treating the audience like it's a dog. Like we're the dogs, like, oh, it feels pandering. It feels like you're coddling people. And nobody wants to feel that way. It's one thing to write a story that propels a message, but it's a whole other thing to take a story that was written for the sake of just portraying a story and making it a political story, forcing it in there, because then you're not using a story to propel a message. You're using that message to propel your story and to sell a product, and you're just jumping onto the back of this movement so you can sell something, so that you can rebrand. No one is saying that the old Disney movies don't have issues. I am a diehard old school Disney fan, but I'm also not an ignorant twit who doesn't recognize that there were some issues? Peter Pan's a great example. Peter Pan is my favorite classic Disney movie. Even I see the Native American scene and I go, ugh, a little bit every time. Every single time. Lady and the Tramp, I can see how some people would, go on the whole, the Siamese cats and all of that nonsense, even though I still have my whole argument about that. But nobody is saying that the old Disney movies are perfect. Nobody's saying that they didn't have their issues, but they weren't issues made out of the intent of being hateful, of being bigoted or prejudiced. They were made as a product of their time. And that's the thing we tend to forget. And that's really the issue that comes in with these movies, is you're trying to make these movies that were made by an old standard and you're trying to hold them up to the standards of today, which is just insanity. It's just insanity to hold the standards of decades, almost 100 years ago, to the standards of today. And this is a prime example of what happens when you try to force that into something where it doesn't work. We're talking about New Orleans in the early 1900s. You're talking about a very racist, by today's standards, it's racist. It's racist in general, don't get me wrong. Totally racist, not right, not justifying it whatsoever. But at the time, it was just that. It was just society at that time. It was just, those were the standards of that society. Interracial couples were not a thing, especially not in an upper class, deep South neighborhood. And so from the very beginning, what happens is it just hits you wrong. And it takes focus away from the story, and it takes focus away from everything else that's going on, because you can't help but notice that it doesn't make sense. Because they're trying to just force feed this idea that doesn't work in the time you're setting it in. If Lady and the Tramp were set today, none of this would be an issue. Because it would make sense. It would be like, oh, an interracial couple in the, in the 2010s, 2020s, whatever. It would make sense. Because it's totally a normal thing now, because people don't care, because we're more open-minded. We still got our issues, but we're more open-minded. And I realize that this whole episode is going to be mostly kind of a comment on this, but this whole movie is a blatant example of Disney trying to use these valid movements to just sell a product. But jumping off of that whole bandwagon, we come around to Jock. Jock's a girl for no reason whatsoever. Jock is just a girl this time. And again, it's not the fact that you changed it and it does anything, you just changed it for the sake of changing it. If you're going to change something to tell a story and to send a message, you don't change these things that everybody's used to. People have been watching these movies for decades. And when you change a character this much, and you basically just completely redo the character, it hits the ear wrong, it sounds odd, it looks odd, it just doesn't work. And speaking of things that don't work visually, the dogs being real, but then also animated, their eyes are kind of like made a little bit bigger than natural too. There's a couple shots where you can tell that it's CGI to look that way. It looks weird. Everything about this movie is just wrong and weird. Nothing about this movie works. It just doesn't work. Nothing really has any meaning to it, because it feels so forced-fed, because it feels so phony. There is no character development in this movie whatsoever. They just exist on screen. They're just, here they come, they now exist on screen. There's no character development. They are banking on you having watched the original and, oh yeah, that's that character. Oh yeah, that's the character. I have not seen a Disney remake so far that has made me feel like there is nothing there. They are betting on you liking the original. They're betting on you having seen the original. There is no character development. There is nothing in this movie that even comes close to the original. I know I've said that about almost all of these remakes. Some of them I have enjoyed, but this one, there is nothing that stands out about this movie as being good or new or fresh or anything. There is literally zero reason to watch this, especially in a day and age where you can watch either or. You can pick one or the other. Disney Plus. You go on Disney Plus, you can go, do I watch the original Lady and the Tramp? Go watch the new Lady and the Tramp. There is no reason to watch the new one. Aladdin, there is a reason to watch the new one. Not that it's better than the original, but there's still a reason to go watch it. Beauty and the Beast. Go watch that one. You're not gonna like it more than the original. It's not better than the original. So many of the remakes they've come out with, you could watch them, and even though they don't really add up to what the originals had, there's still something in some of these remakes to enjoy. There is nothing in this to enjoy. The CGI is weird. It's off. Maybe if there's anything to enjoy, it's the fact that the town that they portray as New Orleans feels a little like Main Street at Disneyland, and some of the music, you get that Dixieland jazz. I like Dixieland jazz a lot, so I like that aspect. But I mean, other than that, there's no reason to see this movie. There was no reason to make this movie, let alone go watch this movie. They live in an upper class neighborhood, like in the original, but Jim Deere is a starving musician, whereas I believe in the original he was a banker, but he's a starving musician in this one. He's a starving musician. His wife is a stay-at-home mom. How are you affording this? It doesn't make sense. Yet another aspect of this movie that just doesn't make sense. Again, this is where I talk about it treating the viewer like they're stupid, because you're just creating things that have no cohesiveness. They don't make sense. Nothing about it does make sense. And you're just betting on the audience either being too stupid or oblivious to make the connection that these things don't make sense. It feels pandering. It feels safe. It feels middle of the road, and it feels completely empty and void of anything that makes a good movie a good movie. And I know most of this review is about political stuff. It's about race issues. It's about all of that, but that's because that's what this movie is about. This movie is not about Lady and the Tramp. It's not about the story of Lady and the Tramp. It is the story of Lady and the Tramp as a frosting around a socio-political cake. It is them rebranding in the most obvious, pandering, sickeningly sad way they possibly can, and it's done so poorly that you can't really pay attention to the movie. All you can really notice is the race stuff that they're trying to fix, is all of the socio-political things that they're trying to fix, and it just doesn't make sense. Again, almost entirely because Lady and the Tramp is a period piece. This is set in early 1900s New Orleans in a very bigoted, prejudiced, racist time, and we're supposed to pretend like that didn't happen. And that's almost more dangerous than making a movie that's a little bit riskier and maybe touches on that a little bit, but still stays true to what the time was, because you're acting like it never happened. And as we all know, if you ignore history, you're doomed to repeat it. This is them going, that never happened. Nope, that never happened. Nope, that wasn't real. That didn't happen. No, this is how it was. No, this is how it was. No. That's how it should have been, but that's not how it was. Now, if you've made it this far into the episode without getting turned off, again, I do apologize for it becoming more of a political rant, but again, that's basically what this movie is. It is put out there, face value, with no depth. So, I do apologize if you were looking for a movie review on why it's a bad movie or why it's a good movie. It's a bad movie. It's almost entirely because what they were trying to do, they did it wrong. With all of that out of the way, if you've made it this far into the episode, I would like to announce that the next Disney remake coming out is Mulan. I will not be reviewing Mulan. I try not to make this a political channel. I try not to make it all about that kind of stuff, but at a certain point, I do have my own opinions, I do have my own ideologies, and while they are inclusive and while they are open-minded, I'm very passionate about them, and I will not be reviewing the movie Mulan for the simple fact of what's going on in Hong Kong and the fact that the main actress sides with the police from China, and she said, and I quote, "Shame on Hong Kong." So, we will not be reviewing Mulan, which is supposed to come out this year. What we will be doing instead is, while we wait for the next remake to come out after Mulan, we're going to start doing some new release reviews. Start getting, try to do these once a week and pick a movie that's a new release from that week and we're going to review those instead. This is still going to be an ongoing series, but I won't be reviewing Mulan. And so I will be doing my own version of boycotting Mulan for the sake of Hong Kong, because I stand with the protesters in Hong Kong. If you did like the episode, or if you didn't like the episode, there's a thumbs up button, there's a thumbs down button for that exact reason. Go ahead and leave a comment, go ahead and leave a thumbs up or a thumbs down. Go ahead and subscribe if you want to see future episodes. I will see you guys next time.